you are a boy who lives with your grandparents because both of your Umi and Walid are in London for some business matters. But one thing that you don't like about your grandparents is they are so sensitive and what we so call as cerewet. So you decide on not talking to them. And one night, while you are sleeping, your grandfather wakes you up at 3 in the morning, and you don't like that. But then your grandpa tells you that call your aunties because your grandmother has passed away. And at that time, you realize that you didn't talk to your grandmother, and you didn't have the chance to say, Nene, I'm so sorry, and I love you. Would you forgive yourself for that? Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good afternoon I bid to Mr. Shams, Paul, and my friends. My topic today is people should forgive others unconditionally. What forgiving unconditionally means? It means letting go of your negative emotions towards the wrongdoers. It can be yourself, it can be your friends, your lecturer, or anyone else, and you replace those negative emotions with positive attitudes without any condition. I agree with this topic because of two reasons. Number one, it lowers both emotional and physical pains. Secondly, it prevents wrongdoers from repeating their mistakes. Before we move to our first point, the story that I've mentioned before is a real story that happened between me and my late grandmother. At the first place, I didn't forgive myself. But then, as I mentioned before, both my Umi and Walid are in London. So when my Umi got to Kuala Lumpur, he went to my grandmother's bed and she sat on the bed. She cried there because she didn't have the chance to meet my grandmother. But then I told that I didn't forgive myself, right? I tend to put conditions that I will not sit at the bed. But then as I watched my Umi said, I did that thing and I cried until the moment that I forgive myself. Then I realized that I freed myself from the sadness, which leads to our first point. Forgiving unconditionally lowers both emotional and physical pain. Do you know that if someone hurt you, don't you feel stressed?
Yes.
Do you know that stress is caused by a hormone called cortisol?
No.
Cortisol. Higher amount of cortisol would lead your body to have high blood pressure, unhealthy heart rate, lowers back pain, and others. According to Wikipedia, Hope College researchers said that forgiving could lower the amount of cortisol in your body, and it is supported by Duke Medical Center that having a forgiving heart could lower both emotional and physical pain. Moving on to our second, before that, remember, hurt is unavoidable, but suffering is not. Moving on to our second point, which is forgiving unconditionally prevents the wrongdoers from repeating their mistakes. According to Raj and Wiltermuth 2016, forgiving, if expressed, would reduce the likelihood of the wrongdoers to repeat the same mistakes on the victims. And they also mentioned that forgiving unconditionally, the wrongdoers that were forgiven by the victims would more likely to behave nicely to the victims who have forgiven them. Dorothy Holloway, whom her one and only son, was killed by a man named Murphy. But then after 15 years, she had forgiven the murderer and let the murderer call her mom.
Wow.
And now she is striving to free the man from the imprisonment, from the prison. But let's say if she didn't forgive the murderer unconditionally, the murderer might repeat the same mistake in the future after the murderer had freed from the prison. Remember, the weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is an attribute of the strong. said Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, some might argue that forgiving unconditionally condones the mistakes of the wrongdoers, and it is as if we are opening the door for them to repeat the mistakes in the future, right?
Yes.
We are afraid if we forgive others, forgive people who hurt us, they will hurt us in the future, right?
Yeah.
But remember, at my second point, Raj and Wiltamuth said forgiving unconditionally would lower the probability of the wrongdoers to repeat their mistakes. Do you remember?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I have a question. When Mr. Shams forgave us for not wearing the proper attire during our night class, our Monday night class, and us coming late to the class, does that mean he accepts our mistakes?
No.
And would you repeat the same mistake?
No.
If you're answering it, he is behind you. Now, before I conclude my speech, I would like to recap two main points in my speech, which are number one, lowers both emotional and physical pain. Second one is prevents wrongdoers from repeating their mistakes. Okay, I will conclude my speech with another story. Are you ready?
Yes.
One day, Sayyidina Hassan was sitting with his companions. They are munakasha. They are discussing about something. MashaAllah, Arabic. And then came his servant to serve them with drinks. But the servant accidentally dropped the drinks, and that has got Sayyidina Hassan really mad, really upset. The servant somehow felt really scared, and he immediately recited a verse of Quran. Subhanallah. The verse is وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ, and those who swallow their anger. When Sayyidina Hassan heard this ayat, he said, I swallowed my anger. And then the servant continued, وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, and those who love to forgive people. Sayyidina Hassan said, I've forgiven you, my servant. And lastly, the servant said, Wallahu yuhibbul muhsinin, and Allah loves those who do good deeds. Do you know what Sayyidina Hassan did? Yes, he said, go my servant, I feed you. This is the real meaning of forgiving unconditionally in Islam. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaching his servants how do we forgive others unconditionally. So if you want other people to forgive you unconditionally, if you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive you unconditionally, forgive others unconditionally. And that is all from me. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.